If we can build a workplace where people feel connected to each other, but connected to the work, like, does it matter to them? Does it have meaning, right? What are we here to do? Even folding cardboard boxes, if I know that this is making a positive difference, this box is the best box, and
That's
people
right.
put gifts in it, and like what meaning does it have? And so, do we connect them to each other, the human connection, but also do we connect them to the work?
I'm Dr. Joey Fawcett. Welcome back to the Work Positive Podcast for people leaders who know that growing people and growing profits are the same thing. I don't know about you, but I like simple. Now, simple and easy are two different descriptors. I do the difficult, but I like to start with the simple. My guest today likes simple also. He's committed to making complex human behavior simple and actionable. He brings to this show some simple strategies he's developed for human betterment with everyone, everywhere. That's something I share in common with him. We recognize that the people we lead get better at work and take their elevated humanity home with them. My guest is the author of two bestsellers, Getting to Better, a new model for elevating human potential at work and in life, and Responsive Leadership. He's worked with over 300 organizations across 12 countries, from youth justice and foster care to F-35 pilots and executive leaders. So what do you say we keep it simple on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast? Work Positive community, you're in for such a treat today. I've just been talking to him for a little while, and I'm already a fanboy. So, let's just call it what it is. Stephen DeGroot is here, Work Positive community. Stephen, welcome to the Work Positive Podcast. I'm so excited.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joey. I'm pumped to be here too.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. It's awesome. So you're obviously a superhero. Obviously a superhero.
Well, my mom thinks so. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Well, like I told you before, when my mom passes, I don't know who's going to listen to my podcast, because I know I can count on her every episode. She's one of the 12 people.
Yeah.
If every superhero has an origin story, Stephen, what is yours? How did you get into this whole notion of elevating human potential?
Well, thanks. I think I have to start with my parents. Obviously, my father was a, European, Dutch conservative European work ethic, and my
Mm-hmm.
mother was, was big in the church, the homeless shelter, and the, just helping people. So I was screwed from the beginning. I had a AAA personality for helping. I was also one of four boys, and I am an identical twin. So I lived in a cocoon of what I call the three great states, very safe. And
Mm,
yeah, so I was always felt nurtured. I always had one of me to kind of get up with and go to bed with.
mm,
But so I was always fascinated with working hard
mm,
and working hard at helping people. And it never really made sense to me that people were sad in places that they shouldn't be sad in, like at home,
mm,
in the basement of a church, and at work. These are the things, Dr. Joey, that just confused me so much for so long, that I kind of grew into building a career out of it, and just being, perpetually pursuing this idea of better. Like, it's got to be better. It's
mm.
supposed to be better, right? And that's kind of my origin story. So I love helping. I mean, I feel like I get depressed if I don't feel like I've made a positive difference in 24 hours,
Mm.
which is both a gift and a curse. But yeah, that's a big part of my story, I would say, for sure.
Wow. So before we started recording, you mentioned Go Giver a couple of times, and I'm a big Bob Berg fan and love his book and everything.
Yeah.
So, I can see that in your origin story. So you're a go giver on steroids, it sounds like, because
Yeah,
man,
I
I can
am.
so relate that work ethic, idle hands are the devil's workshop, you're supposed
Yeah.
to be doing, 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 doing. And then this noblesse oblige, right? The
Hmm.
real greater cause. And the real reason why we're all here. And you and I are both convinced that when we create work positive cultures and we redefine work so that people are finding the kind of meaning, purpose, fulfillment, satisfaction
Yeah.
that we want them to have at work, then that translates into home and into neighborhoods and communities. And so the world literally becomes a better
Huge.
place. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, we talk about work is one of those, it's like one of three areas you can control. We've got our homes, we've got the, places of worship, whether that's a synagogue or a church or whatever, people gather, and we've got work. And I think we spend, like you say, 70 to more of us more time than that with, at work, and it takes a toll. It take you know it's and again, I'm a big believer that work shouldn't hurt, right? And
Yeah.
so what condition are we in? And I believe in a lot of the same things you do, that I think we should be better, by the end of the day, not worse. And I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, like I think that's a really big thing that we should make as a priority, is we should make work feel better, more positive, more meaningful.
Wow, man, you just tripped a trigger in my head, flipped a switch, really. What if parents came home and were excited about their day, talked about how fulfilling their day was? I got to help people, to your effect, I got to help a teammate do this. And
Yeah.
that was the model, the mental model that children were raised with regarding work. Instead of
Oh,
I
geez.
owe, so off to work I go.
Yeah, yeah, or getting home and complaining, or being, you know, I found out early on when I used to work in mental health, children's mental health and community mental health, that
Hmm.
that, their parents were often, or their caregivers, and if they're foster kids, were often, what condition were they in when they returned home? Did they grab a book to read, or did they hit the basement for a bottle? Right? Did they grab the baseball bat to play ball and to play catch, or did
Mm,
they use it to
mm,
smash something? Right? And I think,
mm.
I think kids are the first line of receiving parents when they get home, right? And what condition are they in? And I think if work could think about that and have that bit of a moral responsibility,
Mm.
we'd start getting better, and we'd start getting better faster, I think.
Yeah, so how do you as a parent talk to your children about work, and what mental models are you setting up for them? What kind of templates are you giving to them? Wow, you just
Yeah.
took me back to some models out of my own childhood there, but the purpose of this show is not therapy. So
Well, hey, I think there's a fine line between therapy and friendship, and
absolutely,
human
absolutely.
connection, right? Human connection.
Human connection,
Yeah.
exactly right. And I think in a disrupted age, which is disruption is the norm now, right? We're just
Yeah.
constantly being disrupted, and augmented intelligence is certainly the driver of that. But so many other societal forces are as well. And we could spend the rest of the show talking about those. But in a disrupted age, in an era where so much is unglued, and I want to hear about an acronym you use in your book
Oh, yeah.
called NUCT also.
Yeah.
It just seems to me that human connection is so important, and the ability to spend 70% of our waking hours in a culture that supports human connection, and
Yeah.
the human connection, if you will. That
Yeah.
just seems to be fascinating. So the book is Getting to Better and Work
Yeah.
Positive Community. The link, you can go right into the show notes, and go over to Amazon, grab your copy. Please, please, please do this. This is going to be one of the best books you read this year, I promise. And it's right there, Getting to Better, a new model for elevating human potential at work and in life. And that's exactly what we're talking about now. So give us that acronym, NUCT, out of the book,
Yeah.
and talk to us about that, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, at first it sounds like a very violent acronym, NUCD, NUCD. But if you've ever experienced them all at once, so the acronym stands for new, unpredictable, complex, and disruptive. Now, those are four types of change, four very variable types of change, and they go from, less worse to worse. But when you experience them all at once, it can feel very visceral. It can feel like nuclear, right? And
Mm,
and so I use the word nuked to kind of conceptualize some people's experiences in massive disruption.
mm.
And I've worked in some pretty serious places like jails and hospitals during COVID, and things like that. And yeah, nuked is this idea that, but it doesn't have to be the full disruption. It doesn't have to be complex. On any given day, depending on your day, your level of resources, your relationships, even something new, right, and exciting or spontaneous can dysregulate us, right? So being aware of one or more of those three things can help us kind of predict and kind of navigate situations that are disruptive. Yeah, for sure.
Wow, you just reminded me, and I've forgotten the exact percentage, but a very high percentage of lottery winners are right back down in their current economic state before they won. And so
Yeah.
that's something that's disruptive, which you would assume is great, right?
Yeah, you would absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
But they get nuked right there at that point. So we both obviously are devotees of this notion that a work culture can be positive, first of all, and that it can go home with us, second of
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So let's say that I'm doing some things to create that kind of work culture. What is some of what you've seen create that type of work culture where this can happen?
Well, I think disruption is almost a red herring because we're built for disruption. Like, when the earth used to crack open and fire came out of it and we were being
Hmm.
chased by taking down mammoths and being chased by, saber-toothed tigers. So when
Uh,
people say like, wow, we've never seen this kind of disruption. No, not that you can remember, but you know,
collective
uh,
human experience would suggest
yeah. How
otherwise.
about birth? How about childbirth? Like when you come, that was probably from this very calm, cocoon-like, warm
I know.
space
It
to
was
come into
great
this
in
super
there.
disruptive
Yeah.
nuked life, right? and
Yeah.
and the thing is
Right.
we're built for it. So I
Oh,
think human connection, you hear this a lot. I'm a proponent of I call it the three great states. We'll get to it, like connection, clarity, and control, right? Like
okay.
if we can build a workplace where people feel connected to each
Mhm.
other but connected to the work, like does it matter to them? Does it have
Mhm.
meaning, right? What are we here to do? Even folding cardboard boxes, if I know that this is making a positive difference, this box is the best box and
That's
people
right.
put gifts in it, and like what meaning does it have? And so do we
Mm,
connect them to each other, the human connection, but also do we connect them to the work, to the meaning of the work, and does it matter? And the other one is clarity. The idea of like, do I know what's expected of me? Do I have clarity on what to anticipate, my role and responsibility? And am I clear? Is it predictable? Like, can I anticipate what's coming next? And we don't just mean process and structure. Like, have you ever worked with somebody, Dr. Joey, where we don't know who's coming in Monday morning? Are they going to be hot, cold, sharp? Are they going to be warm? And that
might have.
unpredictability, right? Yeah, exactly. Like, who do we avoid, or who do we lean into? And I think that lack of clarity, even around relationships, creates an unpredictability which causes anxiety. And then
Mm,
the third thing is control. And we often get a sense of control, that personal sense of agency, by feeling
mm,
connected, by
mm.
feeling clear. That offers us a personal sense of agency, which I call control. And I think if we can build a workplace or a team around those three things, those core essentials I call, I think we'd
Mm.
be doing much, much better for sure.
Oh, definitely. And then when you combine autonomy with agency, it's game on then.
Well, yeah, yeah. And I think I love Daniel Pink's work, and shout out to him.
Mm.
This idea of autonomy can be misleading, though, I think, because, in a hospital, you can give somebody a call button, right? And we think, well, we've given them a sense of autonomy, but when you push it and nobody comes, there's no sense of agency, right?
Which is
So
most of our
this could
experiences.
this can be like a slippery slope. Yeah, yeah. And I think a
Uh-huh.
lot of people with parents or who've been in hospitals can relate to that. And I think if we say, well, we've given them autonomy, yet they're not functioning or kind of as
Mm,
comfortable as we want them to,
mm,
we miss the actual thing. Is that what we should be talking about is a personal sense of agency. Autonomy is
mm,
great, but we got to go a
mhm.
step further, right?
Mm, mm. Yeah, and in a work culture, using the difference between agency and autonomy to really treat adults like adults. And I
Yeah.
think once we connect their work to something meaningful, and you remind me of the old story about the two stone cutters, one's
Oh, yeah.
cutting stone and the other's building a cathedral, right? Once we connect them to those things that are important to them and fulfill the human potential, or at least begin to elevate it,
Yeah.
then agency and autonomy take on a different meaning. And by the way, I've spent a lot of time in hospitals over the last few years with my aging parents, and
Yeah.
I don't reach for the button. I just walk to the nurse's station.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know where to go. Yeah,
I
you
take
head
my
head to the
agency and
nursing
autonomy
station. Yeah.
with me down to the
Yeah.
nurse's station.
Yeah.
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 So let's say we're creating this kind of culture. We're seeking to attract top talent to this
Yeah.
culture. We know
Yep.
that they're evaluating us. We know that people today, by and large, especially top talent, can get a little skeptical, shall we say, about
Oh,
what
yeah.
might be described about the work culture. How do we authentically represent a work culture that's work positive and wrapped around these three C's that you just talked about?
Yeah. I think honesty for starters. Like I think, the skepticism is real. And
It
I just
is,
wanted to
man.
say a shout out to the skeptics. I tell
Yeah.
skeptics all the time, hold on to it. I respect skepticism. I've got different views on pessimism. I think we got to be careful to not let the skeptic become septic. But I say to people, like, skepticism is a form of protection.
Yeah.
And, And I think it's good for people to hold on to it until we give them a
Mhm.
reason to trust us, right?
Mhm.
So hold on to that skepticism, but organizations need to be honest about their culture. Because I think what happens is you have this disappointment to disillusionment continuum, which leads to demoralization. So be honest about what you can provide and who you are, because I'll tell you, values are a key to this, right? So when you think about connection, clarity, and control, values are one of the most powerful forces of mechanisms to be able to create a meaningful experience. So when companies actually make those values mean something, having them on the wall is one thing. But
Mhm.
when you make those words mean something, people show up early, they stay late, they start to work cross-functionally. It lights a fire within them, not under them, to perform at greater, a greater capacity, right? And I think that's a big thing. So be honest, be clear about what your values are and why did you invite them? I mean, that's the thing, right? When people complain about their employees, I'm like, we invited them. There was a table of
Who
five people
hired
sitting.
them?
Exactly. Like I sometimes think we're performance managing the wrong person. We got to go back to like Randall in the interview who said, who vehemently said we should have this person,
Yeah.
right? And again, because people come in, we invite them in at a level of quick level of assessment and performance quickly. I like three things, right? We come in, we want them at preferred. They come in maybe at passable and then poor, right? So did we invite them in? And like some of us, we believed either that they were going to be preferred or passable for a bit to get them preferred. What happened? How come
Mhm.
they're operating at poor and for how long? And whose responsibility is that? And I think
Whose responsibility is that?
having honest conversations about that, I think is absolutely key, right? So
But instead, we want to lob stones at them and say, well, we hired him. He lied to us.
well,
We told him
blame,
what
I
he
don't
did.
know if you know this, Dr. Joy, but you probably do. And it's, it's tongue in cheek, but blame
Uh,
is, it feels so good. It's the quickest form of emotional self-regulation, right?
yep. I can calm down because it's not my fault. It's your
Absolutely. As
fault,
soon as
Stephen.
like it's like as once I think that Sheila's lying, oh my God, that feels so good, right? It just sets in.
It's all right.
So and again, I just for the listeners, that was pure sarcasm.
Well, no,
Right.
it's
We don't
true
we don't want to
too.
blame because that leads to shame. And once we shame, then we game, and then it
All
becomes
right.
this cycle, right?
Mhm.
That we can't get out of. Yeah, for
It's a
sure.
rather self-satisfying feedback loop that we create for ourselves there. But
Yeah.
instead of lobbing those stones at each other over a wall, right?
Yeah.
As you say, who hired the person and how did the system support that person once they
Yeah.
got here?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And to
Absolutely.
flip that over, okay, the SHRM oftentimes quoted statistic 57% of all people leave a job because of a bad boss. Okay, who took that job in the first place?
Yeah.
Whose responsibility was it to vet that boss, find out he's a
Yeah.
jerk, and
Yeah.
not take the job? It's
Yeah.
it's the applicants, right? Don't take
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
job just because you had to.
Yeah, no, and I think that's tough, especially when you need the job, right? I mean, we have to,
It
this whole
is.
idea, is it around people, you can just leave a job. No, really? Have you ever had children to feed and medical
Mm,
bills to pay, right? I mean,
hmm.
it's a pretty, I think it's a pretty, yeah, I won't go down that because I get frustrated, but I think
No, it
we have to
is.
look at the
It is.
reality that some people can't leave their jobs and they stay. And that's why I think it's up to the workplace, it's up to the organization to create an environment that if people do have to stay, that they
Hmm.
stay in a way that helps their well-being and strengthens their individual and collective resilience, not wears them down and burns them out, right?
And it sounds like that means another hallmark trait of a work positive culture, the kind that you and I are so intentional about creating, is really parsing how we regard humanity.
Yeah, yeah.
Are
No,
these people
yeah,
that come in and build widgets, or are these people for whom we're seriously intentional about elevating their potential, as you say, at work and in
in
life?
life. Yeah, yeah. And I don't see the differences. I think the line between work and life is as thick or as thin as you want it to be in terms of,
Mm.
people say, oh, leave it at the office or don't, leave it at home. I'm like,
How does
show me
that work?
somebody who,
Yeah.
because when we're driving to work, no offense, we're the tool, we're the biggest tool.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
We're
Yep.
bringing our
Yep.
heart, our head, and our hands, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm not sure how you can disintegrate aspects of yourself, especially when we're asking people to show up fully, right? Like there's so many paradoxes and contradictions. Show up fully, completely, authentically, but just not like that, and not in that way, and not right now. Right?
We don't want that part of you.
Exactly, right. And it's like, so let's just be honest. Like, let's be honest about what we want from our people and what kind of an, because I think it was the philosopher Immanuel Kant who said, who's I'd like to refer to him as Immanuel Kant, is, when we use, when we use humans as a means to an end, we dehumanize them.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to take that quote seriously, because when we do feel like we don't matter, nothing else really does, right? And I think we slide very quickly into that demoralization kind of feel. Yeah.
And how does that contribute to your bottom line when you treat people like that?
Oh, there's so much research, right? There's so much research that shows, and that's why I'm still confused, right? I mean, let's not get this, let's not be silly. We know that the first treadmill that went into a corporate office building was not for well-being. It's because, did you know that they show up early and they don't take their life? It's like, let's build a gym, and then like years later, like most good things, we find the research catches up, and it's like when Forbes like 3 years ago, did you know that empathy was important, right? I grew up in human services. I'm like, it's kind of important. And are we still calling it soft skills? I mean, let's get with it. Let's fix this stuff.
Yeah, my friend Lindsay Dowd likes to call them power skills. So
and for sure.
Again, with the disruption that AI is bringing into the world now, those are power skills, right?
Yeah, it's AI is just compressed time, right? That's what it's done. So it's like it's just compressed time, and it's compressed the amount of disruption in that time. So it's pretty intense for sure.
Hard and fast, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that I have examined my regard for humanity and my true desire to elevate their potential. So I invite them onto a team. What do I do? And I know that we both love simple, so the answer sounds simple. What do we do to keep them on the team?
Make work meaningful. Make sure that they feel like they matter, right? I think this whole idea of matter, and Zach Mercurio wrote a book, and I hope I get his name mixed up with another friend of mine, but he wrote The Power of Mattering. And I think Gordon Neufeld as well, good Canadian, one of the first people to really write and research about mattering. I mean, if we just dialed it back, like you want it simple, ensure that your people feel like they matter and what they do matters, and half your problems will go away, right? And the next piece I talk about is meaning, and how do you make it meaningful? Well, people show up with what I call the core four. They have needs, values, goals, and strengths, and they wake up with that, right? So how do we make work meaningful? By attaching it to what they find meaningful, right? And the values, again, if we hired people, if we fixed the gate and we just invited people in that aligned with the values of the company, half our discipline issues would drop like immediately. Because if you think about most discipline issues are not issues of competency, right? Someone failed to do that, fill that out, call back, double check, support a team member, right? So most discipline issues are values issues. So if we hired for values and filtered for competencies, I think we'd see a lot of problems drop. But that's just me. I'm silly that way. Like if you hired teachers in a system that just loved children, that's it. The one requirement was you must love children, and then we'll spend 4 years teaching you how to teach. I don't think we'd have kids in the hallway. I don't think the principal would be inundated with, behavior issue after behavior. We'd have more second chances, third, fourth, and fifth, and we would create conditions to have the patience, tolerance to create the humans that showed up, got dropped off by their parents.
But we flipped it, and I think that's one of the great challenges for us is how to come back to, and I say come back because I think we started that way, to come back to this model that you're saying, because we now are so myopic about what we envision as competence.
Yeah.
In the workplace, we're gonna hire for technical skills, okay, and that I mean, really, it's a myopia, and we've got blinders on. That's what we're after, but instead. That culture fit, the meaning of work, ensuring that the person and the organization are aligned around what makes meaningful work that matters. Once those things happen, then what are some other challenges that you... Let me ask you a question. What if the key to growing your work culture hides in plain sight? Take the free Work Positive Culture Assessment to discover it. Get insights in less than 4 minutes that transform your culture so you grow people and profits. You just answer 13 simple questions and discover your culture stage, strengths, and personalized next steps. Get your free aha culture moment at workpositive.today. Go to workpositive.today right now. see. By the way, let me say Stephen DeGroot is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast.
Who's
I
this
guess
guy that's getting all worked up here? Yeah,
yeah, well, I
yeah.
mean, I just love the conversation with you. I almost forgot to put it in here.
Yeah, that's okay. That's
His
okay.
book, Getting to Better, is in the show notes. Click there and go there, and then we'll talk about what you'll find when you go. He's got a couple of websites we want to talk about. We'll do that at the end of the show. So, what are some other challenges that you see, Stephen, to getting a culture set to this model in which we can elevate humanity?
Well, I think there's two really big things. I think quality leadership saves lives. That's my next blog post, right?
Wow.
There's all the evidence is there. So I think creating quality leaders that nurture, support, and develop the growth of other people. I think that's super important.
Hmm.
And I think that the two things when you think about culture, like I'm from Canada, we've got a big focus on truth and reconciliation, and just getting better with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. And I think the pathway back to a great culture, reclaiming culture in any organization or community, is first a shared language. So, like we send our executive team off to Tallahassee or no, Europe for this training, and our senior executives to somewhere in Texas. And then we send our middle managers and they all get different training, different language, and we expect them to come back and work together and talk the same language. So
Uh-huh.
you need a chiropractic adjustment right off the bat. So a shared language and then values and practice. Those two things are huge. If we can get those two things right, so that the CEO is having a conversation with their director in a way that they're having with their manager, in a way that they're having with their frontline staff, in a
Hmm.
way that they're having with the nurse that's having with the patient. Right. That is parallel practice. That is integration and application at no cost. Right.
Hmm.
So I think that's a really big one. Quality leadership, shared language, and the values that we say are important. How do we operationalize those? How do we bring those into the workplace and feel them and see them in operation? Yeah.
Hmm. But it's so much easier just to plaster them on the wall.
Well, I think I'm telling organizations, take them off the wall, paint over them. I almost got fired one time as a consultant for showing up with a roller and a paint can because I, I got stories, Dr. Joey, where it was making people angry. When they walk by our people first, which takes 14 seconds on floor 3, and they don't feel that they're first, right? Or
Hmm.
they're looking at these words because I think what we were sold in the 70s and 80s was these team building initiatives without really understanding the power of values.
Hmm.
And I think they're an extension of our spirit, right? Which is why when they're compromised, they feel so bad, right? They're just words until our actions give them meaning. So
Yes.
leaders have to ask, what meaning are we giving those values that we say are important?
Hmm. So the simple task is to align our walk and talk.
Yeah, do what we to the extent possible. Because I'll tell
Yeah.
you, if you followed me around every day, Joey, Dr. Joey, I value compassion and integrity. I melted down a week ago. No one was around, thank goodness.
Oh,
But we're
that's good.
human, and we need to surround ourselves with people who will support us and help us, give us feedback,
Hmm.
right? And also help us grow. We need to surround ourselves with what I call mirrors, because mirrors don't reflect back on themselves.
Absolutely. Well, isn't that part of elevating human potential anyway, Stephen? Is to find, you can call them accountability partners. I think it takes a whole lot of grace to live with other humans, period.
Yeah,
At least
yeah,
at least living with me takes a lot of grace.
yeah, yeah.
My wife of 43 years should be named Grace, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
But when I go to work, people are bringing their garbage from home, their garbage from the HOA that busted their chops because their grass was half an inch too tall. I mean, it's just day after day after day, there are these opportunities to de-evaluate,
Yeah,
de-elevate, if you will, the
yeah,
human
yeah,
potential. But man, when you come to work, if you're in a conducive environment to where all of that gets not excused, but the
tolerated,
perception
permitted.
changes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you say, okay, we all get like that sometimes. What did you learn? Let's IAG that and see what we learned from it.
Yeah, well, that's where I need you, Dr. Joey. If we had respect on the wall, right, which is on the wall of many organizations, yet they're yelling at somebody, like, is to have you come along and say, "Hey, Steve, how are you doing?" Right?
Um,
Let's go for a walk. Let the sun kiss
yeah.
our face. Let's go outside for a second. How
Yep.
is what you just said in that room to the team respectful? That's
Mm.
it. And I would say it's not, Dr. Joey. I know. And like have that grace, like you said, like that compassion and that tolerance to support each other through what do I do next time, right? And I think this idea of individualism,
Mm.
and like this idea that resilience is a solo sport is one of the biggest fallacies. We
Mm.
need each other, right? We need each other to grow. We need, and like you're saying, potential is hidden. Like, so saying hidden potential is like saying hidden, or
Yes.
potential.
It's
And
repetitive.
the
Yeah.
only way potential, like, it's unlocked at birth. Like I write about this, like it's unlocked once and it hides from that moment.
Mm.
And the way to access and activate potential is to create conditions where it wants to come out, where it
Mm.
wants to reveal itself, where it
Mm.
doesn't want to hide and hold back, right? Slow down or shut down. And
Mm.
and this is the thing about potential and performance, once potential reveals itself, it's performance. It's no longer potential.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's beautiful.
Oh, it
Right?
is. It is. It is. But it does require a paradigm shift mentally from me to we. And
Yeah.
I've got to invest in you at that point. Stephen DeGroot is obviously an amazing guest. You know now, Work Positive Community, why I called him a superhero right off the bat. We could keep going and going and going in Work Positive Community. I want you to keep going. So in the show notes, there's a link to Getting to Better. There's also the link to his LinkedIn profile. Message him there, learn more. There's also a couple of websites, Stephen, that we want to give you an opportunity to tell us about. BriviaConsulting.com is in the show notes. Tell us what
Yeah.
we're going to find there.
Yeah, Brivia Consulting is our company, and that's where we try to do what we're talking about to scale. So we've got some really cool projects because
Mhm.
it's not easy. This idea of like shared language and putting values in practice, it seems simple, but I don't think because we know better, we can do better. There's something in between. Well, how do you do it?
Mhm.
Right. And
Mhm.
I think we got to cut ourselves some slack and say, we've been talking about this stuff for a long time, but we don't know how to do it as well as we'd like to.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
BriviaConsulting.com is our company that we work with, small companies, but also some very, very big ones.
Mhm.
And we do this stuff that we're talking about in very operational, practical terms. And the other one is gettingtobetter.com, which is a page for the book. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, there's a difference between simple and easy.
Yeah, and simple isn't always practical, and practical isn't always actionable. We like all three at Brivia.
Right.
We call it a spa day: simple, practical, and actionable. If it's not all three,
Uh-huh.
we need to find a better way.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So before I let you get away, Stephen,
Yeah.
thank you for the time today. What's one thing, we call them dots around here. We want to do
Right.
one thing. What's one thing that the work positive community can do starting today to create the kind of work positive culture we've been talking about?
Well, I think the one thing we can do is know ourselves, know our own values, because I think, one of the sources of our own resilience is understanding what's important to us so that we can find the environments that align with that and create that sense of fulfillment and that sense of meaning. And I think, I meet people all the time, like high performers. I've had the honor of working with F-35 pilots and surgeons and,
Mm.
the people we call high performers. And a lot of them don't really know what their core values are. They haven't really stopped to really assess like what's really important to me in these environments, because most of our disappointment and disillusionment comes from being in relationships and environments that are incongruent with our core values.
Yeah.
So the one thing I think is all of us can get clearer about what's important to me, so that when I can gravitate, navigate though, or go to those environments where there is an alliance, where my forces of meaning align with the sources that are available. And when those two plug in, we become unstoppable.
That's when the magic happens.
That's
Wonderful.
when it
Stephen
happens. Yeah.
DeGroot
That's when
is,
magic becomes matter of fact. That's what I want to see. Right.
yeah,
That's what I want to
exactly.
see. It's only magic. People only say like these results, like these massive results. Like, oh, that's magical. Well, no, it is, because it doesn't happen very often. But let's make it matter of fact, where it happens
Mhm.
consistently.
Much
Yeah.
more commonplace. And so
Yeah.
we elevate what it requires to get our awe and wonder at that point.
Yeah.
I
We are
love it.
greater than our current performance. Like, so,
Yes, I sure
right.
hope so.
We are. We are.
But
We're
this
greater.
performance has been
Maybe not now. I
amazing.
mean, come on. Let's. There's a place and a time,
Yeah.
right?
This performance is amazing,
Yeah, I
you
don't think
know.
we can get any greater, Dr. Joey. I don't think we can get any
Well,
greater.
we gave it our best effort anyway.
We did. We did.
Stephen DeGroot's been my guest in this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Everything you want to know and more is in the show notes. Go there, click, get a book, go to a website, and just get yourself some more Stephen DeGroot. Stephen, thank you so much for your time and wisdom today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joey. Thanks for you and all you do, and to the positive work community. We're going to get to better. but we'll get there faster if we do it together. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thank you. I'm so grateful you joined our conversation about creating positive work cultures that grow people and profits. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn today. Just search for Dr. Joey Fawcett, or you can click the link in your show notes. When you send your connection request, mention you're a Work Positive Podcast listener, because I want to give you a free digital copy of my Work Positive Team Edition book. It's a $19.95 value, but I want to share it with you free because it contains practical strategies that I personally use with clients to transform toxic work environments into thriving cultures. We explore in that book how to create a positive work culture, and we do so again in every episode of this podcast. Our LinkedIn connection allows you and me to directly talk about your specific challenges, so feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I personally read and respond to all those messages because I genuinely care about your work positive success. So go to LinkedIn and let's connect. Remember to mention you're a podcast listener to receive your free Work Positive Team Edition book. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of the Work Positive Podcast.